Good morning. We are back with another episode of The Bench. I'm Haley Hernandez. The Bench is our exclusive coverage taking you inside the courtroom of the murder trial of A.J. Armstrong. The 23-year-old is accused of killing his parents inside their home while they were sleeping in 2016. He's been tried 2 times and both ended with a hung jury. Opening statements were supposed to start a month ago, but the judge postponed because of what she calls issues outside the court's control. And that's where we start today. We're back with The Bench.
Good morning from downtown Houston. Folks, this is what we've been training for. There have been several delays along the way, but we expect in earnest this is the day that the third A.J. Armstrong murder trial will begin. Joel, Letitia, Rilwan, am I right about this? Are we done with the false starts? We're going to hear opening statements today?
By all accounts, today is the day we've all been waiting for. Okay. Opening statements begin this morning.
And we were supposed to be at this point, June, right? It was in June. We were supposed to be here, but there's been a number of delays that's pushed it back to today or July 31st.
Let's talk about those delays real quickly. One of them is an interesting motion to suppress evidence. We're talking about DNA that 7 years after the crime was supposedly discovered on some item of clothing or perhaps a name tag that was on an item of clothing. What do we know about that?
We should first say KPRC 2 what investigates was the first to report this. That source is telling us that, like you said, years after the case, that there was DNA evidence found on a sticker that Armstrong wore the night that he was interviewed by detectives that has some DNA on it, and that is what might be brought in, but there's that motion to suppress.
Jason, can we put the players up here real quick
about what that motion suppress actually means?
Exactly. So all of a sudden now, after 7 years, after 2 trials, and on the eve of our 3rd trial, this DNA pops up that supposedly they found on clothing of A.J. Armstrong. And so as you can imagine, the defense went haywire. They were, what is going on? And we all said that, right? What do you mean you found DNA after a thorough investigation?
I mean, you're a defense attorney. Yeah. Is that an outrageous type of discovery?
Absolutely it is. Okay. The eve before the 3rd trial, you want to tell me that your #1 suspect, and after all the examinations, you didn't find any DNA until now? So, of course, the defense did what they were supposed to do, and they filed proper motions, and they said, hey, 1, we want to investigate this ourselves, and we want to analyze this DNA ourselves, and then 2, we also want to say no go. This evidence should not come in. So,
is that something they have to hash out before we even hear opening statements this morning?
Well, I think maybe that may have been something that was done behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So here's one way that you can tell the outcome of what could have occurred behind closed doors is what we hear in opening statements. If you hear something about that DNA being on A.J. Armstrong's clothing, then you know that the prosecution probably won that battle. If you don't hear it, it means that the defense did their job and that the evidence was not either credible enough or too much of a surprise, and it won't be brought into the trial.
Opening statements, typically, how long do we expect those to go for each side?
So from my understanding, the last time we heard, I don't think it'll be more than 30 minutes, 45 minutes tops per side.
Got it.
And that's what the Judge Kelly Johnson right there, she ordered the beginning of all of this, capping it at 30 minutes per prosecutors per defense team.
Yeah.
In the first trial, defense was the only one that went the longest, which was close to 30 minutes, but no one exceeded that. But I remember you telling us you used opening statements for a long time. You used hours, I believe you said.
If you're talking about a 3-week capital murder trial, I would expect at least an hour, per side. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of players. There's a huge story behind this. But from my understanding, each side has, in fact, agreed with the judge and say, hey, all we need is 30 minutes.
All right. So that's going to get going, we think, this morning. And we have some video, I think, from last week where we started seeing both sides gearing up. The defense team, at least, was seen carrying boxes and boxes of, I don't know, documents, their preparations up to the courtroom. That is up on the, what, 19th floor?
On the 19th floor.
In the 178th. And so what time? I know the courtroom is going to be packed today. Ooh. With family and friends, and even the DA's office has kind of been packing them in. Isn't that right, Rilwan?
It has been, and we expect things to get underway in earnest around 9 o'clock. The second go-around, it was packed before the judge even walked in.
Yeah.
It was hard to seat anywhere, and so we're expecting the same thing on the social media connected to Armstrong's family. They've been asking people to come down here to show that support for the family, and so we expect some of them to start beginning to roll in any moment here.
Okay, we do have a soundbite we want to run regarding the motion to suppress evidence. Let's give that a listen real quickly, and then we'll talk about it.
In this Anatomy of a Trial video, we're decoding the legalese behind motion to suppress. Let's break down each word. Motion, according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is a formal plan or suggestion for action offered according to the rules of a meeting. To, well, we don't need to decode that one. Suppress has a number of definitions, but the most relevant is to keep from public knowledge. In legal terms, a motion to suppress is an action around the exclusion of evidence from a trial. Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institute says a criminal defendant will ask the court to keep out or exclude evidence from the trial. Evidence can include photos, video, audio, DNA, testimony, and other documents. But it's not just based on a judge's whim. Check out the State of Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 28. If a judge grants a court hearing on the motion, defense attorneys and prosecutors will try to make their case as to whether evidence should be excluded. Ultimately, the decision rests on the judge's shoulders.
Yeah, that was one of a couple of videos. I think we put together more than a dozen of those videos.
I just want to shout out the team for doing that, because it goes so into depth in explaining these vernaculars that I myself don't use it every day.
Right, we're learning.
So I watch them all to understand it. So I think it's very impressive that we're giving the audience a way of really understanding the language being used.
And you'll see those relevant QR codes on the bottom of your screen, and you can click on those or take a pic of those at any time and sort of see those little sidebars and go down those nooks and crannies. Let's talk about the case itself. Everything, of course, started, what is it? It's almost 7 years to the day.
Yes.
July 29, 2016 is when Dawn and Antonio Sr. were murdered. Of course, Antonio Armstrong was considered really a pillar in this community, a former NFL player, went to A&M. He ran an athletic place, a workout place with his wife. They were very successful and just a very well-regarded family.
They are.
And then this is from, I believe, the night of the murders, the Armstrong family home. And then you can see we advance almost a year there where we see the murder charges. Is that when they popped up in 2017?
Yes, that is when he was formally charged. And this photo really resonates with me. As you can see, you have A.J. Armstrong there in actually jail clothing. And then you have a family member holding him and consoling him. So if you can imagine, he's 17 years old at this time, facing capital murder charges. You can almost feel the energy from this photograph about the fear and the unpredictability of what's to come after this. And so this is a great caption of what that moment was like when the family learned that this child was going to be charged with the murder of his parents.
And who could have predicted that it would be 3 trials that it would take, at least so far, to try to hash out the justice in this whole thing? This being the first trial, that was back in April 2019. This is all after that we start getting really into the thick of the pandemic and COVID, and that dictated a lot of the terms of sequencing and the times of the trial. The second one not happening until October 2022, and that was delayed, right?
It was because of COVID.
Because of COVID.
Right.
And here we are at the end of July in 2023. We should say that these were both hung juries, correct?
Yes.
And actually they flipped in terms of, what was it, 8-4 and 4-8?
Something along that. I want to say maybe 6-4, something to that.
So I remember that the first trial was 4-8. 4 in favor of not guilty, 8 in favor of guilty. Then the second trial, it switched, 8 in favor of not guilty, 4 in favor of guilty. And normally it's something important to note. When the state receives a, I guess for lack of a better word, a decision from the jurors that 8 for not guilty and 4 for guilty, normally they don't retry it. I mean, because you look at the dynamics of it all, and add to that it's the second trial. So the mere fact that they're trying this case a third time lets you know 2 things. They truly believe in it, and they're willing to spend the money to go behind it. They believe he's guilty.
And we know after both, I believe, is it both the defense and prosecutors can go ask the jurors, like, what led to that hung jury, or what made them unclear through it all?
Absolutely. So at the end of the trial, after the jurors have stated that they are hopelessly deadlocked, and there's an Allen charge given, and then Allen charge is just basically telling them, hey, this decision needs to be made, get back in that deliberation room and work a little harder. Then eventually the judge says, no go, she doesn't want to violate anyone's conscience, and it's a mistrial. After that, the defense as well as the prosecution is allowed to go back into that jury deliberation room and speak to any juror who is willing to speak to them. And most of the time what you find is that jurors are so fascinated about the entire process that they want to talk about it. And so both sets of lawyers are going to go back there and say, hey, what were you hung up on? What was the major ordeal?
We want to take just a second to sort of rewind the scene back to July 29, 2016. And at the time, our stellar veteran reporter Phil Archer was at the scene, and this is a snippet from his coverage back then.
According to prosecutors, the call came in around 1:40 a.m. Friday. Police were met at the door by the teenager and his 12-year-old sister, who'd slept through the shooting. Upstairs, they found former Texas A&M and NFL player Antonio Armstrong, along with his wife Dawn, both in bed. Both had been shot in the head, and both had pillows covering their heads. The prosecutors said the murder weapon was a .22 caliber pistol found on the kitchen counter. There was a handwritten note nearby, but what was in that note wasn't revealed in court. The teenage suspect allegedly told police he'd seen someone in the house wearing a mask, but he also allegedly revealed he'd recently practiced shooting the pistol into a pillow.
They questioned the 16-year-old, and he was not able to give an explanation that satisfied the police.
So that's a good flavor of how everything looked back on July 29th, July 30th, moving into August of 2016, quite some time ago. Let's talk about the third trial, the mechanics of it, getting everything going today. Just to get here was an arduous journey, because they had, boy, did they pick a lot. They put together such a large panel of people to pick these juries. How did that shake out? How many people do we have, first of all, and we've lost an alternate already?
We have. So they've started out with 16. You have 12 that are actually in the petit jury, which means the jury that will actually do the deliberations and come up with the verdict or not. And then you have the 4 alternates, right? And those alternates, because of the length of the trial, because of the stakes involved in this trial, normally we get 2 alternate jurors, but in this case they gave 4. And as you can see, that was kind of important and relevant because they've already lost one due to all the delays.
And that person said it was due to like a personal family thing that may have happened, and we possibly believe it's timing of all of this. Because when this all started in June, the judge said, hey, we will expect to take about up until the mid of July of your time. We've exceeded and passed that at this point. So it's understandable that some people say, well, I've already had these set things in place. I now need to break it and I can't do this any longer.
Exactly. So what happens is when the jurors are questioned before they are actually seated on the jury, their schedules and things that they have planned are taken into consideration. And so then at that time, the jurors that were seated didn't have any conflicts given the schedule they were given. Well, of course, after all of the delays, a juror had spent money and time and taken off work for the family to have something, a vacation. And so it was unreasonable to ask that juror to lose money and to forego a summer vacation with their family. And one thing I can tell you, as as trial lawyers, we don't want jurors sitting on the jury who would much rather be somewhere else.
I'd imagine.
It just doesn't yield you a fair and impartial verdict.
Do we have an understanding of what the daily schedule is even like, when we're going from and to every day, Rilwan?
So we expect that we will get more insights into it today. We have some sources telling us that this may stretch hours long. Early on, the judge said she didn't want to keep people beyond 5 o'clock each day, but now we're hearing that may exceed into maybe 7, 8 o'clock each day, just trying
7,
to get
8
through.
o'clock? Wouldn't
Possibly.
that be,
so we will confirm that today once the judge speaks about it, but I can only imagine being seated for that long.
Yes.
Have you heard of that, Letitia, where a judge says we're going till 7, 8 o'clock every night?
Sometimes on Saturday. Absolutely. If there is a schedule set, and in this case you have so many delays, you have to take people's schedules into consideration in terms of what is upcoming for them. You have back to school that's coming up for a lot of parents. The end of summer vacations for a lot of people that have already been paid, and people have scheduled time off from work. So in order to meet deadlines, meaning when they want this trial to be completed, they're going to work a little extra and work harder and work longer hours to meet this deadline.
Don't you have to worry about sort of losing your audience, though, when they're sitting there hour after hour listening to evidence?
Yes and no, but what you will find is when the rubber hits the road in terms of deadlines, jurors are going to say, let's push past it. Let's work longer. Let's get it done so we can move on with our lives and everyone else can move on with theirs. So jurors actually, they get up to the plate and they hit it out the park when it comes to sacrificing when things get going.
I believe you're right, and I have seen that in other trials. Let's talk about what may or may not be part of this third trial. One of them I think is interesting. One of the many pieces of this that are interesting to me is the issue with the gym break-in.
Yeah.
The video of somebody breaking into the gym. This is after A.J. Armstrong had been arrested and was in custody, as I understand it.
Correct.
What is that about? And I know that the defense, Rick Toto, is making something of it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming this is to use as an alternate person who might have done this.
Right.
And so what the argument is that Toto and the defense is saying that it couldn't have been AJ because he was in custody at that point. So they want to use a video of the a gym video break-in where it shows in that video that two perpetrators come into the gym that was owned by Antonio Sr. They break in and they don't steal a lot of things. They just kind of go straight forward towards a computer, trying to suggest that there's some motive, there's something on that computer that they're after. And so that's what this whole gym video is all about. And even before things got underway, Antonio's family member, I believe an aunt who worked at the gym, was brought in to kind of authenticate the video itself.
Yep. So you spoke on something that's really important for the defense, and you said an alternate person that could have committed the crime. The laws in the state of Texas simply state this: the defense has a right to put on alternative theories to any particular crime. So in this instance, a capital murder. The defense has the right to put up alternate theories as to what could have happened and how it could have happened. And so what is going on here is that someone is breaking into this gym. There are other bouts of violence going on surrounding the Armstrongs. And so the defense, I believe, in the first trial, put this evidence on to say it could have been whoever this person is. There could have been other things going on. And that same motive and that same theory behind breaking into this gym and looking into this computer could be the reason why the Armstrongs were killed.
And we do have sound from lead defense attorney Rick Toto on this subject, if we can hear that for just a minute.
We have descriptions of the individuals. We're in the process of getting the video of the break-in at the gym, and it's just, there's a lot of stuff in the background going on with this case, and we're investigating all that, and we're trying to figure out how it's all connected.
I mean, it is sort of in the best interest. I'm not commenting on the break-in itself or any other piece of evidence itself, but it's in the interest of the defense to sort of get people thinking about alternatives in terms of the narrative that the prosecution is telling.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I must mention, you can't just throw up any alternative theory, right? You can't say that aliens came down and they committed the crime. The judge wouldn't allow that evidence in. So the evidence must be credible in some form in order for for that alternative theory to actually get into evidence before the jury. Now, of course, it's important, to bring that type of evidence in to create these, alternative theories. And it is important to get that bit of information because remember, you want to plant reasonable doubt as the defendant. What people get mixed up, we don't have to prove anyone innocent. In fact, the defense doesn't have to prove anything at all unless they're claiming self-defense. But we don't have to show that he's innocent. All we have to show is that there's reasonable doubt that he could have committed this crime. And there's a difference between the two. And it's important for the defense to explain that to jurors. Look, he doesn't. You don't have to leave here saying he's innocent of the crime. All you have to say is, I have a doubt as to whether or not he did this, and that doubt that I have is reasonable.
Plant that seed.
That's all you have to do.
We have some more interesting tape. This is way back from 2013. This is, of course, before the crime, some 3 years before them. We did a fitness story, as I understand it, with Armstrong, Antonio Armstrong, and AJ was, I guess, working out with them. Let's listen and take a look at that clip from 2013.
My 13-year-old son was in here doing power cleans. This was introduction to weightlifting for him this year.
Friends say Antonio Armstrong is a shining example of what it's like to grow up in the inner city and make it big. He played for the 49ers and Miami Dolphins. Now he trains people at his family's gym, not far from his home in Southwest Houston. Friends said he motivates people to be stronger, better. We talked to him in March of 2013 about teens and weightlifting.
A couple things you got to take into consideration. Number one is going to be their age, and number two is going to be their fitness level and instructions that they're getting.
Sort of amazing to see tape like that.
I know.
With no idea of what's going to be happening in the future.
Well, let me just quickly point out that to that point, the fitness test, some of the family members, some of my sources tell me that one of the reasons that the family members don't believe that AJ did this was because of the shape that Antonio Sr. was in, and that in order to believe that he, in fact, AJ, had committed both of these murders, what was the other person doing? And they're saying, from my sources tell me, there's no way either one of them would have stood by while the other one was being murdered. And so because of that, the family believes that potentially there were two assailants as opposed to just one.
I've thought about that issue of two assailants. And some interesting comments I think that AJ has made along the way that makes me think that way too. But let's talk about that. We'll shelve that for just a second. Let's talk about expert witnesses and who qualifies as an expert witness. There's been some hubbub and some talk about this. Is it alarm.com?
Yes.
VP at alarm.com.
a big suit with the company, and there's a question as to whether or not he can testify to the condition of the alarm system that night, which we know, or we think we know, it doesn't appear that the door was ever open during the commission of the crime, and it didn't open really until the police arrived that night.
So the whole thing with alarm.com, this executive, is that they were originally a lay witness.
Correct.
And the prosecutors want to make them an expert witness,
Correct.
which changes things tremendously. All around the alarm system itself. As you mentioned, the alarm wasn't triggered until, according to police, it wasn't triggered until AJ opened the door for police to let them in.
And the obvious issue here is so there wouldn't have been an intruder.
Right, they'd say someone inside committed the crime. Well, the defense has argued that, well, actually, it's widely known within the family that there is some faulty system in the alarm system, that if you go through the garage, there's a way of not setting off the alarm. And that's what we're thinking this new possible expert witness could talk to? Correct.
And so what Rilwan said is correct. Before, this person was listed as a lay witness. So whenever the defense sends out a motion and requests, hey, if you have any expert witnesses, I want to hear about them. I want to know who they are so that I can do my background check on them. Right. And both sides have to do that. Well, the defense did that in this case. And so at that point, it triggered the state to have to give them notice of all experts. So at the last minute on the second trial, before the third trial, we want to make this lay witness an expert witness. And that's important because expert witnesses are allowed to give their opinions about certain evidence. So it's not just us talking about the facts. I get to tell you whether or not I believe this evidence is hogwash. It has no value. And so that was the big stink.
Is
at the
it
last
damaging
trial.
to the defense, though, really, if this guy qualifies as an expert witness?
It depends on what he has to say. If he has to say something that talks about that alarm, and that alarm wasn't faulty, or that it wasn't triggered, absolutely it's an issue for the defense. And so I'm believing, we don't know yet, but I'm believing that's what he is going to say.
When are they going to hash this motion out? You got to go.
I have to go right now. I think they'll hash it out.
Right?
We believe before this possible witness ever comes forward, maybe early today. We'll let you all know later, but I have to head out to make sure we have seats inside the courtroom.
I know, seats are an issue. Thanks a lot, Rilwan. It's just me and you now.
Always.
Okay, let's talk about, so do they have to, I mean, to me, there are all these big motions to hash out, at least two that I can think of, and they're not going to tackle those right at the top of the trial before we even get into opening statements?
From my understanding, they're going directly into opening statements. And so what I believe, they have enough evidence there that can lay out their story, can lay out the roadmap for the jury. So I don't think it's that big of an issue. But certainly before any of those witnesses testify or before any of that evidence come in, they will hash out the legal issues and the judge will make a ruling prior to.
Let's talk about some other evidence, the evidence that apparently is on A.J. Armstrong's phone.
Yes.
So there's a lot there. There's a lot of material there. And Judge Kelly Johnson, to some degree, I understand, is limiting the scope of what can be looked at by the prosecution or be part of the trial?
Absolutely. And so we have this rule of evidence under 404B that basically states any prior bad acts or anything that the defendant may have done that wasn't or that doesn't put him in the most favorable light is inadmissible. So you can't introduce character evidence to show that a person has the propensity to commit the crime. However, there is an exception to that rule, and the exception is, well, you can admit this evidence if it goes to show motive, intent, a modus operandi, meaning like a signature of the crime. So in this instance, it could possibly be used to show motive or intent, which is an exception to that rule. And so if the judge finds that some of it fits within the exception, she will allow some of it in, and if she finds that some don't, then she will keep that evidence out. So I'm willing to bet that is the test. And at the end of the day, she has to do a balancing test, which basically says, okay, this evidence may be relevant and it may be admissible, but if it's unfairly prejudicial to either side, then it won't come in. So there's a little steps that you have to go through in order to determine whether or not this type of evidence would be admissible.
Letitia, you are our expert. There's no doubt about that. Real quickly, we're going to talk about the family support. The family is just, I think without exception, everybody is in AJ's corner. Isn't that right?
Every last family member is within AJ's corner. And my sources tell me that they've spoken with one of the family members who is extremely close to AJ, very close to Don, and that he is 100% on board believing that his grandson did not do this.
We talked to AJ's great uncle, and I guess it would be Antonio's uncle, right before everything halted about a month ago. And we want to go back to one of his sound bites. He sort of put it succinctly.
You haven't given me enough evidence to say that you did it. He did it. So no. And I know he didn't. But even 2 other juries felt the same way. He's had 2 hung juries. So both of them have said, hey, you didn't do it. So why are we still here? That's the question. Houston, why are we still here 7 years later?
I think Harvey Armstrong lives somewhere on the East Coast, Atlanta or something.
Atlanta.
And he says he's not coming back. I understand it through Rilwan. You might have other information until the second week. He wants to make sure that, because he came here for one of those false starts. That's when we talked to him.
Correct.
And I think he wants to make sure that the trial actually does get going, and we think it will here in 30 minutes or so.
Yes.
Wow,
yes.
how about that? And then, so do we have an idea, just as we sort of paint the picture of what's going to be happening the next few weeks, of how long this is going to be? How long is the trial? How long are we going to hear evidence? Is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks? What do you think at this point?
At this point, I think it will be 2 to 3 weeks, 2 weeks for sure, 3 weeks at the max. I think they have streamlined a lot of the evidence prior to with all of the issues that have come up. That's the beauty of delays, because a lot of the major issues during these delays have been worked out already. So it allows the trial to move more quickly and allows the trial to move seamlessly. So I think 2 to 3 weeks, 3 weeks max, that it will be over.
Really?
Yes.
And is that about the going rate for a murder trial? I mean,
no, that's actually kind of long for a murder trial. The normal murder trial will go anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. 2 weeks the majority of the time. 3 weeks means there's a lot of issues going on.
Okay, we're just about out of time. Letitia, you just know the ins and outs of this trial, and I think most others from when I've talked to you, and we appreciate very much that you're here.
I appreciate you, Joe, always.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to send it back to Haley, who is in the studio. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on this all day long, and we'll have reports throughout the day on both KPRC2 and KPRC2+. Back to you, Haley, in the studio.
Yeah, I know you will, Joel. Thank you so much. We will also be on standby to hear any updates from Rilwan from inside of the court.